Recording in
that
progress.
it explains the Eicha Yoiv Ba'apoi, that we have the level of the Eicha and Yoiv, the level of cloud, in a very high level that's higher than the Seder Shtalshlus, above and beyond, not just the polar opposite, and caused through transformation of the cloud of Klippa, the darkness of Klippa, and that reaches all the way to the level of Eicha, that we said Aleph Yud is the Aleph that's higher even than the 10 of the Esespheres Agnuzas, and it reaches all the way down to Koi, to the level of Malchus, and this needs Ba'apoi. Apoi means the level of Gvura, severity, to tear himself away from selfish and self-centered things, to be able to draw down this utmost highest level of this cloud that's able to join together, because it's such a high level, it's able to join together the two extremes of the A and the Koi together. So now the Rebbe is going to go on further in what it says over there in that pasuk, in the beginning of the second Perek of Eicha. Ois Daled, line 18, 6th page of the printout. Mamsh Bakasu, the pasuk continues, Hishlach B'Shamayim Eretz Tiferes Yisrael. He threw down from the heavens to the earth the beauty, the glory of the Yid. What does that mean? So, first of all, there's a negative connotation. Pirush Rashi, and Rashi explains, Hishlicham la'aretz bevas achas v'loi ma'at, that Hashem threw the Yidden down onto the ground at one shot, and not little by little. Me'igre Rama lebira mikta, from a high building to a deep pit and dungeon. Like this is brought down and explained in the notes of the Tzemach Tzedek Megillah Seicha that we quoted before, that it shows how different things are really brachas, even though they seem to be the negative, the opposite of brachas. So the Rebbe is going to explain what is this idea of hishlich in the positive sense. So we can explain this topic also in the positive. That he threw down from the heavens to the earth. It indicates on the avoid of tshuva. So first of all, it indicates a level of tshuva, because the idea of that says it's not loy bashamaymi. It says that this mitzvah that I'm commanding you today, loy bashamaymi, it's not in the heavens, loy me'ever hayami, it's not in the across the sea, but rather one of the explanations what the pasuk ki mitzvah is referring to. One explanation is referring to Torah mitzvahs in general. Another explanation is that the mitzvah is referring to tshuva. In other words, the pasuk establishes for us tshuva is not in the heavens. So this is the pasuk Yishlach Meshamayim Aretz, to tell us about the special mile of tshuva that we're talking about the whole time. The cloud of Klippa being transformed to the cloud of Kedusha. He threw it down from the heavens. He gave it us down here. But rather it's only down here on the ground on this earth. In addition to that idea that tshuva is not in the heavens, it's here in the earth. The avoid of tshuva is not in a step-by-step, organized fashion. Ma'at, little by little, like Rashi said, that at one shot he did it, not little by little. Rather, the way tshuva is done is in the way of being thrown. When you go, you walk, it says halicha or ritza, but here throwing indicates it's when you throw something, it's completely leaving one place and immediately going to another place without any steps and gradations. Meaning, in the spiritual positive sense, it's beyond the seder ishtalshlus of the soul of a person, since the person does tshuva in a way of one moment, The whole idea of tshuva is that in one moment he turns himself over. He jumps completely from where he was in Klippa into a state of Kedusha. He doesn't do it in a step-by-step process. So it comes from a place within the person that's beyond levels and step-by-step. So because the person evokes within their own selves a level that's beyond the chain order of descent, so through doing so by the person by himself, it comes out by the person from a level that's higher than Seder Shtalshus. It draws down, since the person is doing in a way of beyond his own Seder Shtalshus, it draws down the light that's higher than the Seder Shtalshus as well. So that's the meaning, V'zeu, top of page Yud Aleph, V'zeu, Hishloch B'Shamayim Eretz, Tiferes Yisrael. That's what it means he threw down from the heavens to the earth the glory of Yidden. That he took from such a high level and he just bypassed the whole Seder Shtalshus and Hashem gave it to us. What does that mean? First of all, line 2, Tiferes Yisrael, the glory of Yidden and the beauty of Yidden, who in Avodas HaTzadikim, that's the idea of the Avodah of Tzadikim. It's in an organized fashion. It goes step by step, little by little, which Bechlal, Avodas Tzadikim, is associated with the name Yisrael, as opposed to Yaakov, has to do with the heel and transforming the negative. And through the literal idea that he threw down from the heavens to the earth, what does it mean? That it's true in Yeridus HaNeshama. The actual descent of the Neshama into the body is not by gradations. Going from the spiritual to the physical is a complete shock to the system. It's a complete jumping. It's throwing from one level to another. Like Sidus always quotes this expression, from a high building to a deep pit. Specifically through this throwing down, through the neshama being thrown from the heavens into the physical body down here, that's what allows the neshama to attain a level of avodas tshuva that's higher than the avodah of tzadikim. Shehi from the hashlach, that the avodah of tshuva is in a way of being thrown, that we explained before, is lomayl mishtalshus, is beyond seder shtalshus. So here the Rebbe is going to connect it with the previous part that we were talking about. This is what it means. How was he clouding in his anger? He threw down from the heavens to the earth. Through the levels of severity, which is hinted in the word apai, anger. That's in the avodas tshuva, like we mentioned before in Ois Gimel, that the person dismisses and removes himself and tears himself away from all selfish, worldly things. Nasa inyan the hishloch b'shamayim eretz ba'ifin shalomayim mishtalshus comes about the idea that was thrown from the heavens to the earth in a manner that's beyond the chain order of descent. Through that comes down the most highest level of eicha, that causes that eicha is caused by Yov, by the cloud, like it's explained in Sif Beis, that only through a level of the cloud that's beyond that's the Sfiras Agnuzis, and beyond even the Aleph that's higher than that's the Sfiras Agnuzis, it can come down and join in Malchus because you have from such a high level of revelation. So now the Rebbe is going to go on further in the pasuk. I say line 15. Because of the pasuk concludes in Megillah Seich over in chapter 2. He did not remember his footstool in the day of his anger. Now, the simple meaning is the footstool is going on this world. It says that Hashemayim kisi va'oretz hadoim ragloi, that the heavens are my throne and the earth is my footstool. So in the simple sense, Hashem disregarded the world, did not consider the world, did not take the world into any interest. But here, that there's also a positive way of turning this around. The idea behind this is in the explanation of what does it mean. The footstool, what's the meaning of the footstool that it speaks about? So in the Medrash Eichel explains, Isa Medrash, Shehu hadam shebein raglav shel zokin. It is hadoim, I guess is a play on the word hadam, the blood that was between the legs. Hadoim raglav, the blood of the legs of the old one. Meaning hamilod Avram. It's talking about Avram's bris. That is the hadoim raglav. That is what the Medrash says is the hadoim raglav. Perhaps when the Medrash explains it, means that Hashem, instead of remembering what Avram Vinu's sacrifice and making the bris, he didn't remember it. However, the Medrash explains it, but Chassidus associates the idea of the bris milah of Avram, the spheres who inyan yisoid ze'er ampin. We know that we have this in Paschal Yo every Erev Shabbos, that the sphere of yisoid has to do with the mokim abris. So the yisoid of the midas of Atzilus, that is the level of the bris. What does it mean? He did not remember the bris. Yesh loymar, we could say as follows: that in the future, when Mashiach comes, the flow of ashpa, the energy that Malchus is going to get from the higher spheres, will not be through the midas. Yisoid is the connector. Yisoid is the mashpia, and the part of the mashpia of the midas that connects and draws down into Malchus. Though ordinarily that's the way all hashpahs have to go, but when Mashiach comes, loy zachar hadoim raglav, we will bypass the entire Zeir Ampin to be able to bring down the hashpah into Malchus. Af shehad b'derech klal mekabelas b'chinas Malchus b'chinas Zeir Ampin. Though in general Malchus receives from the level of Zeir Ampin. How is that so? So the Rebbe is going to give an example from something else that we could see a similar idea. Valderech hayidua, similar to what it's known. Shebereish chodesh mis'alas ha-malchus l'kabel m'chinas chochma shelo yadei zeir ampin. That on Reish Chodesh, Malchus rises up to receive from the sphere of chochma without, again, bypassing the level of zeir ampin, bypassing the midas. Though ordinarily it goes from seichel to midas, then to Malchus, Arish Chodesh, Malchus goes up high on its own and bypasses that. This means though at the time of Reish Chodesh, though we use the term that it arises, but it doesn't mean it completely leaves its place. But not like on Shabbos, that on Shabbos it completely leaves its place and completely removes itself from the world. For this reason, because the Malchus on Reish Chodesh, though it's receiving from Chachma, does not completely leave its place, it's still invested in this world, and therefore it's permitted in working on Reish Chodesh. And the prohibition to do work is not an actual prohibition, it's only a custom, and it's only a woman's custom that they were given the special Yom Tov because they didn't participate in the golden calf. Mikol Makim, so despite the fact that Malchus does not really and totally leave its place, it still bypasses Midas. It receives from Chachma not via Zeir Ampin. So now he's saying an interesting thing. We said Malchus on Shabbos goes up completely, leaves its place, and because of that, just like Hashem is not invested in the world then, so therefore we are not allowed to be invested in the world, and we're not allowed to do work. So it would seem that Shabbos is higher than Reish Chodesh. Yet, based on what we just now said, about on Reish Chodesh, Malchus receiving directly from Chochma, not through Zeir Ampin, not through the Midas of Atzilus, there is in one aspect an advantage in Reish Chodesh over Shabbos. So he says in line 30, "B'inyan zeh yesh ma'ila b'Reish Chodesh al Shabbos." And in this regard, the bypassing of the Zeir Ampin of the Midas, there's an advantage in Reish Chodesh over Shabbos. Shedavke b'Reish Chodesh, specifically on Reish Chodesh, Masha Enkim b'Shabbos as opposed to Shabbos, Ein HaMalchus Tfeilu Zeir Ampin. Malchus is not auxiliary to and subservient to the level of Zeir Ampin. Shabbos, it does receive via Zeir Anpin, except it all rises up, but it's still Zeir Anpin, it's still the means through which it receives. But on Rosh Chodesh, it's not secondary now to Zeir Anpin. Why? Because Malchus receives from the level of Chachma. Top of Yud Beis, the last page. The main ascent of Malchus that will rise up to receive from a level that's beyond receiving through Zeir Anpin, that will be when Mashiach comes. Concerning this, it says, he does not remember the level of the bris milah. What does it have to do with the day of his anger? We're talking about la'asad lavi. Why is he calling it the day of his anger? That's because the association of the sphere of Malchus with the level of Gvuris. That will be also when Mashiach comes. It says, Chassidus brings down from Kabbalah that Binyan HaMalchus u'me'agvuris, the building up of kingship and royalty, comes from the level of Gvuris, which means there's a certain type of tzimtzum and so on. So therefore, for Malchus to be Malchus, there has to be the level of Gvuris. But still, Malchus will be in a very lofty state. Al derech, this is similar, Shagam b'Rosh Chodesh Nesheres HaMalchus b'Mkoimo, that even on Rosh Chodesh, Malchus will remain in its place. In other words, the ba'apoi, the anger, the Gvuris indicates that Malchus will still be Malchus. It won't stop being Malchus, just like on Rosh Chodesh, Malchus remains in its place, but it bypasses the Midas. The same thing, la'asad lavi, Malchus will remain Malchus, and it will receive from a very high level. So now he's going to give a similar example of something that still remains what it is when Mashiach comes, with its seeming constrictions, but a great revelation in it. So he says in line 8, similar to what is known concerning the kav, that after the tzimtzum, it says that there's still going to be a kav. What does that mean? It's not going to, even though we said that originally there was Oid and Sof and Malachol Makmachol, there was the infinite light of Hashem filled all space. Then we had to make the tzimtzum addition. We had to make the first constriction, and we made a complete empty space. And then in that empty space, we drew down a line of divine energy and light, which was very thin and very limited in comparison, for sure, to the Oid and Sof that filled the entire space into the center. And that was the whole Seder Shtalshus. Still, we're in the lowest place in that kav. When Mashiach comes, everything is going to be filled with the Oid and Sof. Does that mean the kav is going to cease to be? He says no. That even when Mashiach comes, despite this awesome revelation of the Oid and Sof, it will still be via and in the kav. Line 9, even when Mashiach comes, that the kav will be touching and cleaving also in the circle that's on the bottom of it. Here it needs a little bit picturing in your mind the idea of tzimtzum addition, even though a picture is chas chalila anyway to look at it. But if we were to look at the kav initially, that after Hashem made this great circle of emptiness, he moved the Oid and Sof to the side. Then he took a line and he drew it down, a line of energy and light, a thin ha'ara of energy and life, that light and life force that is connected to the top part of the eagle, in other words, to the Oid and Sof, to the infinite light before the tzimtzum. And he draws it down to the center of the eagle. So it comes out, we who are in the lowest and last stop on the kav, we are receiving the most minimized hamshacha as it comes from the Oid and Sof. The top of the kav, higher than Adam Kadmon, is what's connected to Oid and Sof. And then it goes down lower to Adam Kadmon and to Tayun, Tikkun, Keser, Akudim, Nekudim, etc., all the levels, till at the end of the kav is where we're located, where Olam Haza Gashmi is located. What's going to happen when Mashiach comes? What's going to happen when the Ein Sof fills the entire world? So Chassidus brings down that instead of the Kav ending now, like in mid-air, in the empty space of the that was created by the Tzimtzum Rishon, now the bottom end of the Kav as well will join up with the rest of the Ein Sof that would be all the way in the bottom of the circle. So again, we said that there's like a circle of Ein Sof surrounding this empty space. The Kav starts off from the top of that Ein Sof. And when Mashiach comes to fill the Kav with this Ein Sof, especially our world, Mola Oretz Dei ושביה, the bottom of the Kav will also join with the Ein Sof as well. So we see how the Ein Sof will completely manifest itself all over again. Yet, we didn't say that the Kav will cease to be. Still in all, even though that the Kav will touch the bottom of the great circle, touching, if you will, the other side of the Ein Sof, so he says in line 10, Nikra b'shem kav. It'll still be called a kav. Shu kav kotzer, meaning it's a narrow kav. So just like when Mashiach comes, the kav will not stop being the narrowness and the limitations of a kav. So too, when Mashiach comes, even though Malchus will go up to a very high level, and it will bypass the level of receiving its ashpah from Zeir Anpin, even then, it will still be Malchus with all the characteristics of Malchus that needs the Gevuras to make Malchus be what Malchus is, and therefore you need to have the level of Ba'apoi, which shows on the idea of severity. So he says in line 12, Oizvav, Valpia, do according to what's known, that whenever we study any matter in Torah, it's not just an intellectual pursuit, but it actually affects and draws down that concept that we are studying. Just like we say when we study Karbonis, through studying the Karbonis, we affect and we accomplish those things that comes about through the physical bringing of the Karbonis. Whoever is involved in the studying of the laws of carbon oil, for example, it's considered as if he brought a carbon oil, etc. Like it says in the Shalma Farim Sosenu, that our lips will make up for the bullocks that we would bring in the Beis Hamikdash by reading and learning about those particular bullocks that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash. That completes and forms an action as if we actually brought it. So just like when it comes to the idea of Karbonis, the same thing concerning learning the Torah about what's going to be in Mashiach's times that we were speaking throughout this Maimer. In Yehi should be the will of Hashem, Shalimud b'Torah ben Yonaman is Karam Leil, studying in Torah in the matters that we mentioned earlier. Yifal l'maher l'karev kim and Yonam elu should affect to speed up and to bring closer the fulfillment of these things, that we will actually have the revelation of these levels. When it will be fulfilled what was foretold, that these days will be transformed to rejoicing and happiness, because of Mamish Bagol Dedan, speedily, and the way we understand the idea of speed and quickness.